I am super excited for today's guest. She is going to change the way that you think about food, not just what's on your plate, but how your body processes it and why that matters for everything from your mood to your skin. I am sitting down today with Ellen Postulowski, who is a professionally trained chef, integrative health coach, and author of the book Gut Driven, a practical guide to whole body healing. We are going to talk about the health scare that led Ellen to really rethink everything she knew about health and wellness, as well as how she helps others today tune into their bodies to enhance digestion and achieve better gut health overall. Welcome to the show, Ellen.
Thanks, Kat. Thank you for having me.
Ellen, you spent your career nourishing others, right? You were working as a private chef for families, including an NBA star, and then you received a diagnosis that must have really felt completely out of sync with the life that you'd been living and what you thought you knew about health. So, can you bring us back to that time? What happened? What was that diagnosis? And how did that shift your understanding of overall well being and wellness?
Yes, about 9 years ago, I was working as a chef. I help my clients with their nutrition needs and I walk the talk. I consider myself a very healthy person and, eat well and exercise daily. And I was at a regular doctor's appointment and my blood work started following this trend of my white blood cells were low, my markers were off. And then I had my DEXA scan, which is my bone density scan, something that, when you get older, you have to start doing. And I had lost a significant amount of bone in 1 year or 2 years. And they said that I had the bones, at 50, I was told I had the bones of an 80-year-old. So that threw me for a tailspin. During this time, I had also gone back to school for integrative nutrition because as I was getting older, I wanted to shift my career a little bit more and get into more integrative health and not work in the kitchen. I worked a lot of weekends, always on call. And so this diagnosis, like literally threw me for a big loop. They told me to, off the bat to go to see an endocrinologist, which I did, went to like one of the best endocrinologists. And they told me they wanted me to go right on bone meds. And there was a lot of side effects. And while I was in school, I was learning a lot about integrative nutrition, lifestyle habits, dietary changes, and it wasn't meshing with me to just take a prescription right away because there was a lot of side effects and I was having all these gut issues. They told me that I was not absorbing my nutrients. So it was almost like I was malnourished. And I couldn't fathom it. I couldn't understand it. So while I was in school, I was learning about self care practices, more about lifestyle medicine practices, just the food on our plates. And it really pushed me in the direction of, I ended up staying in school of gut and hormonal health. Specifically, that was ended up being my niche. But I wanted to figure out why these things were happening first. And that was a big part of my journey. I needed more answers. I was getting very frustrated with a lot of different doctors that just wanted to write a prescription. I said, like, if I'm not absorbing nutrients, then how am I going to absorb the medicine that you're giving me? So there was just many, many questions. I felt like I was very rushed. I wasn't giving personalized attention, like, it was quick visits in the office. So it's what led me in this direction of writing the book eventually, but that was like a 4-year journey where I found a good team of doctors, got back on track, fixed my gut. And it was so many other things besides that that I'd love to like mention today. Not only the food on your plate, but how I wish I could go back like 20 years, like to be in my 30s or 40s. And when I went back and looked at my blood work on a more of a functional lens, like there was a lot of red flags that I could have um, looked at differently or handled differently that weren't handled. And, I was told that it was normal. I was told that it was just the way my body was, like consistent white blood cells. So it was a very interesting journey. And I got so passionate about it that I really wanted to share all this information because I felt like a lot of people do not know this. I started working with clients and a lot of women, especially now, like hormonal health is a big thing. It's a very trendy topic, and menopause and perimenopause, and there's a lot of things that we should pay attention to.
Going back to what you said about you wish that you had 20, 30 years before started paying attention. So, what were some of those things that even the doctors weren't calling out to you or they said it was normal or fine?
Well, I remember when I was about 38, I was running. I always loved to run. I was running. I jumped off a curb and I ended up twisting my ankle, but I had a fracture on my ankle. And my GP had said to me, I want you to go see an endocrinologist. He thought that was unusual. And I did see an endocrinologist, and she just said, "Oh, you're okay. Just take some calcium." And literally, she traced her finger on the back of my spine and said, just go home and take some calcium, you'll be okay. I was probably experiencing osteopenia at the time. I was probably losing estrogen in my body. I was probably going through some changes already that could have been addressed. I had probably inflammation brewing in my stomach for years. There were things, when I think about it now, when I was younger, I had a lot of reflux, and the doctors just gave me prescription, acid blockers. When we take
Mhm.
those things, when it becomes something chronic and we take them long term, we're literally like depleting the acid in our stomach. Therefore, we don't break down food like we should. It's a very vicious cycle of things that people take for granted or people normalize, like having acid reflux. And I also remember that when I was younger, I had really bad cramps when I had my period. And again, I was just told to take naproxen. And I took a lot. Like I took a lot of Advil just to get
Yeah.
away from the cramps. And even those long term are not good for your stomach. So I had a lot of things going on. There was a lot of inflammation in my body. My immune system couldn't take it anymore. So it over time, your immune system wants to fight for you. It wants to keep you healthy. But when you're not caring for it, eventually that foundation is breaking and it's breaking. And at some point, your immune system, which I see all the time now, is that most people, their immune systems are shot. And there's always a tipping point for some people. And for me, it was seeing that. And luckily, I did go and get that scan and I was aware. So we watched the trend. I did find a good team of doctors. I was able to regain like 9% of that 10% bone loss within 2 years. And I did a very short, concise round of medicine, but only when my gut was ready. And, now everything is stable. And it's been 2 years since that and taking the
Wow.
medicine and getting my gut back in order. And, that's been probably like 4 years now, but it was a lot of information and it was a lot of education and awareness for me about how personal it was for me specifically. That's a big message of mine too, is that you have to find out what works best for you. We have to like crowd out all of this media and this, you should do this and you should do that. And so
Right.
it really is a very personalized approach to what works best for you. And it's more than, like I said, more than just the food on your plate. I was very in a very high stress situation with my job, always being on the go. And I had to like take a step back and just say, it's time that I start taking care of myself because nobody else is going to do it for me.
In terms of healing your gut and tackling your osteoporosis diagnosis, what were some of those first steps? Like, what did you do immediately, and what are some long term things?
First of all, you have to have somebody that listens to you. Like, you have to have a good team of doctors. And from there, building a foundation of better habits. I work through a very functional lens now. And in the functional world, we use the term remove, replace, reinoculate, and repair. And I had to remove, when I was having a lot of my gut issues, I was put on a low FODMAP diet. And the doctor said, just take these things, eat these foods, and come back in 6 months. And it was very confusing. And for someone who works with food, I adhered to it and I felt better initially, but I remember relapsing. And I always said, like, I wish that somebody had just called me up and said, how are you feeling with this? So that's why I work as a health coach now. And I wrote this in my book. And I feel like the whole thing materialized because I said I want to be that go between doctor and patient because people need support while they're going through these things. We have so much autoimmune, we have so much hormonal problems, people that just don't feel well. Women, especially, like everything, we blame everything on menopause and we blame everything on our hormones. And the thing is that we have to support our hormones and we have to do that with diet and lifestyle. And that's exactly what I started doing like years ago. I really took a step back and eliminating a lot of things, eliminating alcohol and sugar and gluten, the top antigens, which I write about in my book. And it was a process, but when you start feeling better and then all of a sudden you see the blood work change, things are working in your favor, it's kind of all worth it because it's,
Mhm.
it's your health again. And I know that you went on something very similar, but, getting that information and helping people be accountable for making those changes is what I do now in my profession, what I write about in the book. And it's about taking care of yourself, not normalizing symptoms, and just
Yeah.
being your best advocate.
The other thing about more of like functional approach or leaning into lifestyle and nutrition is that it takes longer to see results. And so if you're somebody who wants to see the immediate impact and you're not seeing it, then you think it's not working for you, right? So having somebody like you kind of in between coaching them and and helping them stay on course or, helping them adjust depending on what they're feeling, then that's needed because you don't see your doctor that often. Like you said, you go every 6 months for your check-in. Going back to gut health, I know that one of the things that you say is that you're not what you eat, you are what you can digest. Can you help expand on that? What does that mean? And why is gut health just really so important?
Well, I say that it's the epicenter of everything going on in your body. Our gut, controls like the functions in our brain, it controls our hormonal functions. So when the gut is off, then everything seems to be, you want this like fine tuning wheel. It's almost like somebody throws like a wrench into it and then things go off. When I was my sickest, and I had said to the doctor, how am I supposed to absorb these drugs if I'm not absorbing nutrients? Like when they told me that I was literally malnourished, it didn't make sense to me because I'd spent money on food. So
Mhm.
I remember one of my doctors we were going over blood work, and my protein was low, and I said, but I eat so much protein. And he said, but you're not digesting it. And he's like, you're not breaking it down. So we want to break down that protein into amino acids, and amino acids are what helps us rebuild muscle and gives all the foods that we eat, gives us energy and feeds our microbiome. So if we're not breaking down that food, so again, like we'll go back to the example that I told you about taking long-term PPIs or Advil and things like that. When we lower our stomach acid significantly and it becomes more alkaline, which we don't want. We want an alkaline environment in our body. But when it comes to our stomach is very acidic. And it's that way because it has to break down food into all the nutrients that we need. When you take one of those acid blockers, it's making that environment more alkaline. So when you eat something, you're fully not breaking it down. And there's so many different scenarios. If somebody has a gluten sensitivity, that gluten is considered an antigen, unless you have celiac. If you have celiac, you have to eliminate gluten. It's just not good for your body because it's considered an allergen. You could get very sick from it because when your immune system is off, it perceives a lot of different foods as invaders. So if there's some sort of protein in the food and it sees that, it's going to attack it. And that's why people get bloated and people get gassy. They could also have a lot of more harmful bacteria in their body than beneficial bacteria. So to answer your question, like you want to be able to break down that food efficiently and effectively. So what I like to do when I go back to that remove, replace, repair, and reinoculate is that we want to calm down the environment. And we have to really calm down by eliminating a lot of those top antigens, but it's only short term. And it's not a quick fix. That's the big thing, like you want to do it very mindfully and you want to reintroduce things slowly, but your body is so capable of correcting and healing itself, but you have to give it time and you have to give it consistency, and you have to give yourself some compassion in doing that because it's very important to heal it. When you are constantly feeding things and then just taking some sort of med, like you literally can be pulling apart the lining of your stomach. And I always like use the example and tell people, imagine like you see these holes, and that's when undigested foods go into the bloodstream and start causing all kinds of havoc on the body. So with the gut too, like that can also affect cognitive functions because our vagus nerve runs from our stomach to our brains. So when I usually say when your gut is off, then usually your cognitive functions are a little bit off too. And you could be grouchy or moody, also not sleeping well. Sleep is one of the first things that we see improve when we help people heal their guts.
It was actually surprising to me when I learned from your book too that 95% of serotonin is made in the gut. So it
Hmm.
impacts how you're feeling, your mood more so than, would expect. So the approach is first to reduce the foods that are causing that inflammation, right? And some people will think, well, why can't I just go take some probiotics, eat some probiotic rich foods. I think that's where the confusion is that there's so much around gut health these days, but the immediate response is get some probiotics and you're good. Go drink some kombucha or eat some kimchi. Why is that not the best approach?
If you were somebody that has small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and it's called SIBO, or irritable bowel syndrome, and people want to take that quick fix, of course, why can't I just take probiotics? Well, probiotics are transient. They're kind of going through and doing what they need to do, but we have to think of the prebiotics too. And we get prebiotics from the food that we eat. And that is a lot of fiber rich foods. So our gut needs fiber. And another interesting fact is that less than 5% of Americans get their daily recommended amount of fiber. So when you're healing, I would recommend that. And if you're somebody that gets very bloated or very gassy, I would recommend that you eat more cooked food in the beginning than raw, like cruciferous vegetables like broccoli. Something like that might cause a lot of gas, or beans. If you're somebody who's experiencing a lot of gas already, you might want to like avoid those things or eat smaller amounts. But you want to really eat foods. And I have in the book, I have over 100 recipes that are friendly for that elimination phase and then reintroducing. When we do that, we're calming things down. So when you eat more fiber to feed those probiotics, if you're just taking probiotics and they're going through and they're not really finding, they're not able to become postbiotics, which is at the end. Now you're going to hear that word a lot more now too, because it really is the end result of what goes on in the body. The prebiotics munch away. I mean, the good bacteria in your body that's there munches away when it goes through the whole system of digestion in your large colon. It literally eats the byproducts of what we eat. And that's how it gets healthy. When there's too much bad bacteria there, it's just like an all out war in your stomach. So you could you might have some temporary relief from a probiotic, but you really want to support what's going on inside of your body. So I'm all for probiotics, but there's so many strands too that you might not be giving your body exactly what it needs. When there's something usually going on. And that's why, like I say, calm the inflammation, advocate for yourself, write down your symptoms, keep a journal so that when you do go to a doctor and you find like a good doctor, you could explain this to them, and they might order a stool test and tell you exactly what probiotics you need for your body instead of just willy-nilly just getting whatever is on the shelf. And then with kombucha, the thing is that if you have a lot more harmful bacteria than beneficial. I was guilty of this myself. I was drinking like a bottle of kombucha every day, and I was causing more harm than I was doing
Oh
anything because
no.
there was so much overgrowth already that it was just a feeding frenzy, and it was just causing more bloating and more gas, and I wasn't feeling well. Now I really look at the labels to make sure that everything is live because it's such a market out there that there are a lot more products that don't really contain live cultures.
Right. It's just fillers and the probiotics are just encapsulated, but then how are they surviving from production to the shelf to your belly? Like,
That's the whole thing. Right, right, right. And marketing is a very clever thing. The way that something is labeled can is made to have you buy it. But as a consumer, we should know that the label should say live bacteria in it.
Mhm.
And when you open it, you should be able to see little bubbles. And kombucha, it could be very beneficial, but make sure you get a good reputable brand too. But there's so many like little things that I write about in the book where that might not be beneficial for you. It might work for somebody else, but it might not necessarily be what's best for you as you're healing.
If somebody is starting out and they're saying, okay, I want to reduce that inflammation, if they don't take a test to see what is causing inflammation for them specifically, what are, I guess, the top offenders that they can just eliminate? Are there universal ones like gluten?
Off the bat, I would say it's usually gluten, dairy, sugar. I would say those top things right away. I would stay away from a lot more raw vegetables. You don't want to eat like a big bowl of broccoli that's raw or a big bowl of kale. You want just more simple salads. Chickpeas could be everyone thinks that chickpeas are very healthy, and they are very healthy. But like for someone who's going through gut issues, they could put you in such a bad state because they're one of the gaseous legumes out there. So lentils are something that are a little bit easier to digest. Stick with red lentils. When they're cooked, they fall apart, but chickpeas are like the worst offenders.
That's
I
so
just had a
interesting.
client today. She sent me a list of things that she was eating, and it was like chickpea pasta, hummus, and then something else with all these nuts. And nuts could be really irritating too for somebody. So I was like, you're eating all the wrong things.
Right. And but then that's the thing is
Like
that you think it's healthy, right? Because you've been told.
but they are healthy, but they're not good for your body right now because they're just
Mhm.
causing more inflammation. So that's
Right.
why I don't like to villainize any sort of foods, but a big misconception too is that when you eliminate, you're never going to be able to have that food again. It's just that your body is perceiving it as an invader right now. So you want to eliminate it so that you can heal and then reintroduce it. When I tell people to eliminate foods, I'm like, it's not forever. Unless you have a true allergic and IgE response, which is an allergy response, then we want to heal the gut first. We want to close up that lining. We want to get all that stuff back in order. And then you can reintroduce it slowly and you won't react as much. But when
Yeah.
we do food sensitivity tests and we see people are really high on certain things, we cut that out. In the book, I do a true elimination. The great thing about where I work now is when I work with doctors, we can do an allergy test and we could tell you what you should avoid for the time being. But not everybody can go in and afford all these functional medicine tests because insurance doesn't recognize it.
Which
And
is
it's costly.
crazy.
It could be out
Yeah.
of, yeah, it's so crazy. So instead of paying so much money out of pocket, then follow a true elimination and just eat real whole foods. The recipes are made to be tasty. That's my job, was to create recipes that are
Mhm.
healthy. And so if you do a true elimination and then you're better equipped, if you're still not feeling better and things are still really off, but you still have questions, then maybe you're at that point where you can advocate for yourself in a better way. When I went to all of my doctors, and I had found this one doctor in Boston. Now, I'm in New Jersey, and he specialized in helping people with osteoporosis, but he didn't practice in New Jersey. So I had to find an endocrinologist in New Jersey that would recommend medicine that he wanted me to get. And that was a really big challenge. I mean, I went through four endocrinologists,
Mm.
but I remember saying to him once, I'm like, do you think you could just write me a note and just say, this is what I want you to do? And he's like, they're not going to care. And he said, you have to remember that you're paying doctors for their services and you should always feel comfortable what's decided on your behalf. And it was really powerful for me to hear that. And it really like stuck with me. He said, you know what you're talking about. You're a big girl. Go in there and tell them what you want. And if they're not going to listen to you, then find somebody else. So it took time to kind of pave the way for my readers and put a lot of information in the book about how we can advocate better for ourselves when it comes to food choices and even reading a label. My one client that emailed me this morning, she sent me a label of everything she was eating, and I was just like, no, 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 those are all no good. Like, you have to get a different product. And that's in the back of my book. I have my preferred products, pages of them. But there are good companies out there with good mission statements, and people are recognizing that allergens are something that needs to be taken more seriously, especially people that have celiac. It really is a shame that it's not given more attention for the people that really need it because it's detrimental to your intestinal tract.
It's so crazy to me that things like that aren't covered by insurance. Just understanding what foods you might be sensitive to, is so important. And you might not even know what you're sensitive to because they might not manifest in actual physical or symptoms that you would recognize, right? Because sometimes, and this happened with me, is that when I did my food sensitivity test, it showed that I was sensitive and reacting to almost everything. There were so many fruits and vegetables that I had been eating so much of, but it was showing that I was getting a reaction to them, but I wouldn't have known that. I actually cut out most foods for a year, but now I can eat almost everything that originally I was sensitive to, including gluten.
Yeah. And you gave it I mean, a year is a great thing. I did it for 10 months where I was like really strict about it, but I can eat gluten now. I used to get a rash on my stomach every time
Yeah.
I had gluten. And I remember going to the dermatologist and I said, "What is this about?" And she was like, "Oh, it's just part of getting older." And I'm like, What kind of an answer is that? But it's really when things come out of, our skin is our biggest organ. So when there's something going on in your body, it's got to detox somehow. A lot of what I do now has to do with proper detoxification. And it's our liver detoxes our hormones, it detoxes environmental toxins, if we're exposed to mold or lead or mercury, things like that. Our bodies should be pretty equipped to detox that, but when there's something going on and your immune systems are really weak, that's where people hold on to those, especially mold. But when your immune system is that off, then it gets reactive, like in your case, to almost everything. That's crazy. I mean, I see people come back with food sensitivity tests and like it's just everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what happened with me. I had mold and uranium and I had phthalates and parabens in my body that were at extreme levels. I was in the above 95th percentile for these things. And so my functional practitioner had told me this is the reason your skin is reacting the way it is because your body's not able to detox properly.
yeah. And you could probably had a methylation problem too,
Oh,
right?
what's that?
When certain gene mutations that we get from our parents
Hmm.
could keep us from methylating properly. So like a lot of times we don't methylate folate, and your folate could be really low, and that's really important to have. The nutraceutical companies are recognizing that more now and making more methylated vitamins for people that don't methylate properly. There's so many different reasons why people don't detoxify properly, but a lot of it has to do with inflammation, and diet is a huge thing. The way that we metabolize, which was happening to me, is the way that we metabolize estrogen in our bodies. We wanted to go down this, it's called an O2 pathway, where everything is fine and everything is great. When we don't metabolize our estrogen and it recycles into our body, we put ourselves at risk for developing breast cancer. And then when it goes down this, it's called the O16, I think it is, highway, we put ourselves at risk for osteopenia and osteoporosis. So what was happening to me was happening for a while. It's not like it happened overnight, but you can reverse that. You kind of like take a detour and you support it with reducing stress or eating more foods that are like omega 3s and polyphenols, getting more chia seeds, nuts, and antioxidant rich foods and fiber. Fiber is going to help you detoxify and clear out those estrogens efficiently. So it's definitely like a balanced plate.
So, somebody who's listening who might feel a little overwhelmed by all this information, what would you tell them would be an ideal day? Like, what would they eat for breakfast or lunch or dinner?
I start my day with a smoothie every day. And I've done that for a long time because for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's just a way to get a lot of nutrients into one serving or one big glass. I use a little bit of aloe vera juice every day because it's very calming for the gut. And I think like when you're somebody that has experienced those reactions all the time and you want to keep everything nice and calm, I put a lot of baby sprouts, greens, especially dark leafy greens are so important for us. Very important for detoxing. I put herbs into cilantro or parsley, something like that, some fruit and I usually use a good protein powder. But yeah, that's like my go-to in the morning. Or if I would create like a chia pudding, I think that's a really good way to start the day. And then you're getting full, you're getting those omega 3s. With chia pudding, you're going to be able to digest it better too, because when they're eating raw seeds, especially like raw flax or raw chia, it's going to be harder for your body to break it down when it's not either ground, like ground flax seeds,
Hmm.
or when the chia seeds aren't plump. Your body can digest it better when they're more in a pudding like consistency. For lunch, I try to have a salad and I'm not talking about when you're healing, like when you're more in maintenance, is just making sure that you're balancing your plate with the appropriate. People say all the time, well, I had a salad and some grilled chicken. And I'm like, well, what was in the salad? Just greens. And I'm like, add some broccoli in there and add some seeds in there and add an avocado in there. Balance it out so that you're getting complete nutrition. I think that there's so many people that are constantly not full enough, and then they're craving something within an hour or two, and then they reach for something sweet. And that's a vicious cycle too. We want to get away from the sugar. Sugar is terrible for our bodies, it's terrible for our skin. Be full enough so that you're really not looking to snack on anything. And if you are going to snack on something, have a date with a walnut in it or pair that with a fat so that you're not raising your glucose levels and you're keeping that steady glucose response. So we want more nutrient dense foods. In the back of the book where I have my maintenance program, there's so many nutrient dense foods. And I went with a plant based theme because I really wanted to hone in on the fact that we don't get enough fiber in our diets. So when you're in maintenance and you're feeling better, then add that protein, like add that piece of salmon, whether you're, vegan or pescatarian, whatever it is, add that to it. The recipes are pretty balanced. And then dinner is always fish or some more veggies. But also, too, I don't want to villainize anything that comes from the earth. I feel like everything is villainized. I love my root vegetables. They're very important. Sweet potatoes, purple potatoes, eat the color of the rainbow. I eat white potatoes too because they turn into short chain fatty acids. And that is what our body needs in our microbiome. Like it needs
Right.
that butyrate. And that's what feeds our microbes, especially. It's a very important part of nutrition. If it's whole foods and it's coming from the earth, then why did like social media turn it into like this horrible thing? Another thing is that every day I get somebody saying that. I mean, I went to a party over the weekend and this woman said, I heard that fiber's really bad. And I was like, what? Who told you that? What study were they citing? It's such craziness. Like she was talking about grains, and I'm like, there's so many different ways that you can talk about that subject. What kind of grains are you talking about? I use the analogy all the time. When somebody goes through surgery, there's the brat diet. When people are sick and they have a surgery, they say eat. It's called brat because it's an acronym for bananas, rice, apples.
Mm.
Um, I forget what the last one is, but anyway, it's what would it be? Tea. Those are
Toast?
Oh, it is. It's toast. Because your body, especially when you have surgery, most people have anesthesia, and sometimes that's all you want. But like rice, for instance, when you're sick, like when our dogs are sick, we give them rice because it soothes their stomach. So there's a reason for all that. Don't have a huge bowl of it every night, but don't villainize it. I definitely think of variety and I plan ahead and I think, what didn't I have last week that I want to add in? What kind of colors can I add in this week? Even when I'm making chia pudding, I won't make just a regular chia pudding. I made one last night that has dark cherries in it. I found passion fruit and I put it all in the blender because now, cherries are so good because they help our body make melatonin. Just getting different colors in there because there's so many things about all those different colors that are so beneficial for our bodies. So when I think about a typical day, it's like there's not one thing, but diversity is so important. There's clients of mine that just, I have a guy that all he eats is kale salads all the time. And I'm like, dude, you got to break it up. Can't just live on kale salads.
Yeah. How are you getting a full nutrient profile from eating the same thing every day?
That's what I tell people. Keep that in mind when you're planning a menu. And planning is so important, right? If we're going to succeed in anything, we do have to carve out a little time. Cooking more meals at home is so important. Do the best that you can, but visit a farmer's market and source some local foods because if you're buying something that was shipped from miles away, you're not getting it at its freshest. So it's just little things to be more mindful of when it comes to feeding your body and getting like the most nutrient dense foods. But I like even frozen foods are good. They're frozen fresh and they're convenient when you need that little quick fix.
Yeah. Actually, on the variety front, one of the things that I did when I was healing my gut was I was aiming for 50 different types of fruits and veggies per week because I had watched some documentary around how the average American only gets, I think the max was maybe 15 fruits and vegetables per week. And I think that's even pushing
Some
it.
people not
Yeah.
even, yeah.
Right, right. And so that was my goal was to get 50. And it was actually really difficult to do unless I got the frozen or essentially I would get salads from like a Sweet Green and just try to load it up with all these different types of vegetables because that was the only way if I feel like I could hit the target without overextending myself. But it's kind of hard to get that variety.
I think initially it's hard, but then if you think about it, when people are doing that challenge, your herbs count as as a
Right.
food group too. So you can put cilantro and some dill on a salad too, and there you could just have put two more. Or
I know I
I
was
like
counting like
I
ginger, garlic, which put in everything.
yeah, and then I have a lot of salad dressings too, where you could put five different things, and that could be five food groups right into your salad dressing. I use tahini in a lot of recipes because it's good for our thyroids. And so like that counts as something too. Or sprinkle hemp seeds or flax seeds on top of your salad too. That counts for it. I say sprinkle that on like everything.
Going back to wellness trends, I know we talked a little bit about how wellness trend like there's some that are a little bit ridiculous. What are some that you actually like? Like are there any wellness trends that are top of mind that you feel like, yes, that is a really good trend to follow?
I mean, fiber is becoming like a topic now. People are talking about that, so I like that. I heard that postbiotics are becoming talked about more too, but just knowing that it's not a quick fix, like you said before, we're paying attention more to an individual approach to
Mhm.
nutrition and not doing what this 25-year-old says. If you're a mother, a 43-year-old woman with three kids, and you're chronically stressed, you probably have like adrenal fatigue, and this guy is saying to work out, do 3 hit classes a week. That is probably not, so I would say what works for everybody else doesn't necessarily work for you.
What do you think about intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting, that's a huge trend. So that this is something that I don't really like that much.
Mm.
Like I think it works really well for some people. I think it works better sometimes for men than it does women because
Oh,
we seem to get those hormonal responses, and that most women seem to be in that fight or flight mode more than men, and then it disrupts our hormones. If you think about it this way, right? Intermittent fasting, if we eat when the sun comes up and then we have our last meal at the end of the day, it should be what, like around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, the latest, and then you eat again at 7, you're kind of doing 12 hours anyway. Eat when the sun comes up and then stop when the sun goes down kind of mentality. And you're
yeah.
probably doing a good fast anyway. But when it becomes more extreme, when it's like 16 hours and 18 hours, I can't tell you how many women come into our practice that have like completely messed up their bodies by doing
Oh,
it. And they're just, yeah, everything is off. It's a very short term fix because you will lose weight, but I don't think it's sustainable and seems to disrupt hormones and cortisol a lot.
got it.
So it's a little too extreme. I hate to use the whole like hunter gatherer analogy, but it was always the men that went out and needed to fast. They loaded up, and we were the ones that were home, like preparing meals and really not worried about that. But I don't know why it became this huge thing for the masses. I don't want to say it's bad, but that's why I use the sun comes up and the sun goes down. It is good for our bodies to fast. We definitely get a good metabolic response from it. But again, when it goes into extremes and it's done for a long period of time, I see people that their hair is very thin, they're very tired, they end up not sleeping a lot because of it. Then they say, "Oh, well, I only need 3 hours of sleep anyway." I'm like, no, you need a little bit more because it's all restorative. Like sleep is one of the, I think our brains work 40% more when we're sleeping than when we're awake. All the restorative processes are done when we sleep. So sleep is very important. When we're messing with our cortisol levels and our adrenals, usually sleep is the first thing that's affected.
Intermittent fasting, the extreme version, I think, is for biohacking, right? For longevity, because when you're not processing food or eating, then your body is not using that energy to process the food. And your body goes through what's it called?
Yeah.
Autophagy.
You're using your glucose stores as your main fuel, energy fuel.
Right.
So, but then it gets so complicated with the science, but yeah, you're not feeding your body glucose. And I mean, protein can turn to glucose too. So if you're like starving it and it starts using up your fat stores, yeah, that's your energy source.
Right. Yeah.
And you can go days without eating, but like, why would you want to?
You
I
know,
mean,
I
like,
agree with you. But I guess going back to your point, it's a personal thing. If you feel good and you're doing it and it actually makes you feel good, then that's one thing. But if you're spiking your cortisol, you're more tired than you were before you were doing this protocol, then that's something to pay attention to.
we tend to normalize a lot of symptoms. Definitely look at things like your skin changing or your hair changing or your hair falling out or being very lethargic or having brain fog, because those are the things that end up being normalized. Or, you might be drinking a lot of black coffee to get through the day. Then going back to digesting properly, if you digest your food properly and then you get the energy from it, this breaking down into the cellular structure that actually gives you energy, then you don't have to do all these crazy things.
Yeah, like if you go back to the foundational things, then you don't need to be fixing, I guess.
I want your foundation to be so solid and strong that if you do get something, like a flu, then so many people find out that they bounce back so quickly. I love hearing that. They'll say, like, well, I was exposed to something at a party and everybody got sick, but I was sick for overnight and then I was better. And I'm like, that's because your immune system is so much stronger now. Your immune responses work differently.
Actually, on the subject of getting sick, do you have any recommendations for what somebody should do or eat if they're feeling like they're coming down with something?
I love drinking my lemon water every day. That's mostly for digestion, but I think soups are always good. I have a healing soup. This is for my next book, by the way. My next book will be this beautiful cookbook with all these recipes in it.
Wow.
But one of my soups is a healing ginger soup, turmeric, ginger, just like a nice brothy thing, but you don't want to like overly spice something if you're sick unless you're congested, and sometimes spices helps.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, are there any last thoughts or any advice for somebody who really wants to take health into their own hands?
I think journaling what's going on in your body is a good way to keep things, write it down on paper. And you have to tune out of social media and all the noise and what's working for everybody else. I think the elimination is a really good way, because if you feel like that you're taking a lot of meds to band-aid things and it's becoming bothersome, and then you're noticing that you're not feeling like yourself, like sometimes we forget what it feels like to feel like the way that we used to and have energy. So take note of all those symptoms, or if you're on a journey and aging well. For me, I was, I just thought like, if I have the bones of an eight, this is me 10 years ago. If I have the bones of an 80-year-old, and of course, I Googled it, I would be dead now, because you take one bad fall if you have these horrible bones and then everything goes downhill. So, purpose is very important when you're deciding that you want to go on some journey. Like, what's your purpose? Why are you doing this? Who are you doing it for? Because for me, it was that I wanted to age well and I wanted to be there for, I don't have children myself, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I want to be the cool aunt still, and I want to be there for when they have kids, and I don't want to rely on medicine, and I don't want to start taking any. Once you take one thing, it always leads to several more. All of a sudden you're taking one drug and then you have to take another. So figure out what's your why in this whole journey is a huge step in taking that first step.
I heard this quote that was there's only two things that you should value in life. It's health and time, but you should focus on health because that buys you more time. And I loved that. It
It's
stuck
so
with me.
true. My dad always said this, when you have your health, you're the richest person in the world.
Yeah.
And it's so true. But I always say to my clients, if you change nothing, then nothing's going to change. You could still do what you're doing, or you can decide to make a change. And you just do it subtly, make small changes, because those small changes lead to giant strides in the end.
Ellen, where can people find you or, learn more about you and your upcoming book?
I've had the website chefellen.com for forever and ever, so it's pretty easy. Chefellen.com is where you find me. My book is on Amazon, on the major retailers. I'm on Instagram at Chef Ellen also. And that's where I post most of my new recipes. And I always give the recipes with my posts too.
Thank you for
So
that because I know it's frustrating when people don't do that.
I know. And I don't want to send like a word to somebody. Like DM me. I'm like, no, I want the recipe.
Yeah.
That's why I always give the recipe, because you know what? It's easier that way.
And when is your new book coming out?
Good question. I'm not sure yet. It's still going through the processes, but I'm hoping like in the next year.
Okay. And it's not a
Yeah.
secret,
Yeah.
right, that you're working on a recipe book?
It's not a secret. I want to put it out there, because so Gut Driven is the healing book and it's the way to do it. But the next book, I want to call it Living Gut Driven, just the way to maintain and the way that our lifestyle should be. It's not this quick fix. I think that when most people go through this journey, and with so many of my clients, is that all of a sudden they're looking through different lenses, they're seeing that, why wouldn't I stick to this? And that's what I want them to do. I'm not holding your hand for like 3 months and then you go back to all the stuff that got you sick in the first place. This is what your lifestyle should look like. That's what the whole new book is about, is just those beautiful recipes.
I love that.